So this is the 13 Moon Goddess podcast, episode 1, with the theme Kali, and I'm Evi OMsGurl. Welcome.
And I'm Aiah Zemira. So we're gonna move into an embodiment practice. So just when you're ready, you can just close your eyes if that feels comfortable to you. And just settling into your body. Feel where your body connects with the earth, the ground, the surface. Feel the physicality of your body and all the points of contact. If you're sitting in a chair or on a couch, or maybe you're sitting on the floor, wherever you're sitting, just notice all the points of contact. Notice where your hands are touching. Notice where your roots, the bottom of your body is touching, if your back is touching anything. And just let's give ourselves a deep breath, inhaling in through our nose. Open your mouth, sigh and sound it out. Ah. And just let yourself settle deeper into your body. Let it becoming just kind of heavier and deeper.
Can we do a couple more sighs?
Yeah, we're gonna do more.
Okay, cool. I was like, oh, that feels so good.
Yes. Yeah. So sinking deeper into your body, letting it become heavier, sinking deeper, and almost as if you're becoming heavier and lighter at the same time, right? So you're becoming more solid and physical and embodied, but you're also allowing yourself to have this lightness. So bringing in the duality, which is the goddess, is duality, bringing in both sides. Let's go ahead and take another deep breath, inhaling in through your nose. Open your mouth, sound, and exhale it out. And as you sound it out, you're just following your intuition, you're following your voice, you're just doing it in a way that is what your body needs. Let's do that again. Inhale in through your nose. Pause at the top, hold it at the top, hold it in, hold it in. Open your mouth, exhale it out. And again, letting your body sink deeper, slowing down, calming, finding your peace. And we also want to find our center, the center of your body. And that could be your womb space, it could be your heart, it could be your solar plexus. Wherever your center is, just allowing yourself to be in your body, knowing that you're here for your energy and your energy alone. We're not taking on anyone else's stuff, because there's a lot of stuff out there, but we're here to be in our center, here to be in our energy. So just feel what that's like to be at home with yourself, to be in your center, to be at home in your body. Take another deep breath in your center. Inhale in through your nose. Hold it at the top. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Open your mouth. Exhale it out. And to come fully into our body, we're just going to tap the top of the head. Tap our forehead, right around our eyebrows, tapping our face down to our cheekbones, tap all over your face, tap around your mouth, near your ears, tapping around your face, connecting with this part of your body, making your way down to your neck, tapping your neck. And again, just letting your hands intuitively guide you how fast or slow. Tapping your chest, your arms, your heart chakra, tapping that chest, tapping down the arms, your hands, tapping down your abdomen and the side of your body, all the way down where that bra line is, and all the way down to your hips. And then you can even tap the back, lower back. And sometimes dogs like to do energy work.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Tapping your hips and your lower back, getting around your spinal cord, tapping your legs, all the way down your legs, tapping your feet. Let's take another deep breath. Inhale in through your nose. Hold it at the top, hold it at the top, hold it at the top. Open your mouth, exhale it out. Whew. And just opening your eyes, noticing how you feel, how something so simple can be so powerful. It can shift our state of being, our energy like that. So, yeah, that was beautiful.
That was so good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So I'm going to move into sharing Kali's story because today our theme is Kali. And so, yeah, we'll both be sharing also our stories that connect with Kali and how Kali came into our life. And yeah, we both kind of felt called to Kali for this first episode. And then there was a few signs, and we were both like, fuck yes, Kali is our first goddess for this. So, her origins are steeped in ancient Hindu mythology, where she first appears as a fierce aspect of the goddess Durga. Kali's origins can be traced to her emergence from the combined wrath and energy of various gods during intense battles against demons. According to the sacred text, the devil Mahatmya, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Kali was born in a moment of intense crisis. The world was threatened by the demons, Madhu and Kappa, who's, I'm probably butchering the names, but there were very, very extreme demons who threatened the world, who symbolized the forces of chaos and ignorance. In response to this threat, Durga, the great warrior goddess, summoned forth Kali from her own brow, a gesture that symbolizes the unleashing of pure, unbridled power. Kali didn't hesitate. With her terrifying form, she leaped into battle, destroying the demons with ease. But Kali's role extends beyond just vanquishing external enemies. She is also the destroyer of the inner demons that plague the human mind: fear, ego, and attachment. As the first of the 10 Mahavidyas, or wisdom goddesses, in the Tantric tradition, Kali holds a unique place in Hindu spirituality. Her worship is particularly prominent in regions like Bengal, Assam, South India, and Nepal, where she is revered as a powerful protector and a guide to spiritual liberation. Kali's iconography is designed to provoke a deep response in those who gaze upon her. She is typically depicted as a dark-skinned goddess with 4 or 10 arms, each holding a weapon of the severed head of a demon, symbolizing her ability to cut through the darkness of ignorance. Her skin is black or blue, representing the infinite nature of the universe and the dark void from which all creation springs. Her red eyes glow with intensity of her passion, and her tongue lolls out, a symbol of her insatiable hunger for truth and her power to devour evil. Perhaps the most startling aspect of Kali's appearance is her garland of human heads and her skirt made of severed arms. These gruesome ornaments represent the dissolution of the ego and the surrender of the individual self to the divine. Each head in her garland symbolizes a conquered vice, while the severed arms are a reminder that physical actions alone cannot lead to spiritual enlightenment. Kali's tongue, often depicted dripping with blood, is a potent symbol of her power to consume ignorance and to challenge the established order. Her appearance is meant to disrupt our complacency, forcing us to confront the realities of life and death. and to move beyond the superficialities of existence. Despite her fearsome appearance for those who fully surrender to her, Kali reveals her true form, a radiant and loving mother, full of boundless energy and infinite grace. In this state, she becomes the gateway to higher consciousness, guiding her devotees through the darkness and into the light of spiritual awakening.
Yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I had my eyes closed because I feel like when I close my eyes, it allows my ears and my other senses to heighten, and just, yeah, got to listen to that. And yeah. And so I'm going to be sharing my origin story as well. And so, yeah, I didn't know Kali back then, like in her name and form and everything, but there are many, parallel that's a word my friend uses, a parallel experiences. And so now I also get to go back into my story and bring her into it in a way. So yeah, so my origin story, everything began my first day of high school. And so I woke up, it was literally first day of going to high school, a new school, because I'd graduated 8th grade, left grade school, 8th grade behind, all of that. And yeah, and then I went into the bathroom and I started severely vomiting. And so that's how my day started, is just, my head over the toilet and just this uncontrollable vomiting. And it was the moment I knew, I was like, something's wrong, right? Like I knew, like, something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong with me. Something is going on. And it just led to a really awful first day, right? Because I was just rushed in the morning, and it just led to a domino. If you've ever heard those stories where one thing goes wrong and it has a domino effect. And my day was just an awful, awful day, because it started off just being sick and feeling sick, and it just very much left me out of sorts. And so, um, and so that was my first day of high school. And then after that, again, the uncontrollable vomiting continued. It was like literally morning sickness for like 8 years, like 8 years of almost every single day. There was just this, stomach pains in the morning, uncontrollable vomiting. It was happening frequently, almost all the time. And so I was in and out of hospitals for 8 years. So all through high school and all through college, I had tests run. They were just, running tests, every fluid you can imagine that they've tested. They took my saliva, my blood, my stool, like all of it. They ran tests on me. Um, they just threw around words that they're like, it could be this, it could be that. They're like, well, maybe you're allergic to dairy. You have acid reflux. You have, just, I was never really diagnosed. They were just, kind of throwing out these words. And then every time they gave me pharmaceutical drugs, it made me 10 times worse. So it took that vomiting and I felt sicker. It made my stomach pain worse. It made the vomiting worse. At one point, I ended up vomiting up stomach acid because I couldn't get food down. So at that point, there were times where my body was very malnourished, as you can imagine. And so there were times where I was literally puking up stomach acid from my stomach. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, maybe you have acid reflux. And they gave me, like, the pills. And so every time they gave me these pharmaceutical drugs, it made me 10 times worse. Um, as well as, I went to the hospitals for healing, and I did not find healing. And like I said, I got sicker because of drugs, and I've never finished a pharmaceutical drug bottle. Like I just knew I would take one or two of what they prescribed, and then I stopped. And I'm like, I just knew my body I didn't know it was a gift back then, but I know now, and I'm so attuned with my body to this day. Like I'm a highly sensitive woman who is so aware of my senses and my body and my attunement. And I just knew, I was like, this is making me sicker. Like I can't take these pharmaceutical drugs. And so I never went beyond 2 or 3 pills that they prescribed to me, and they did it over and over and over again. They just kept prescribing me more and more drugs. And I felt very like isolated, like nobody would listen to me. Another example is like I told a woman that when I was and this is through my teenage years, right? And I told her my weight fluctuated. And I was just like, oh, I've never heard of that. Let's not talk about that. And so I was dismissed a lot of times. So I didn't have a very good experience. And I even have traumatic experiences. I'm not going to go into those today, but it was, I can't tell you one good experience that I had in 8 years of going into the hospitals. I, for me, it was a very isolating, negative, made me sicker, no zero healing. Um, yeah, and I mentioned the vomiting. Well, guess what? I had over 50 other symptoms. So that was just one. I had insomnia, um, severe insomnia. There were days where I would go without being able to sleep. I had severe, and my insomnia even started as a child. So some of these symptoms did start earlier, but it was that day. That day was like something's wrong, right? I didn't really know when I was younger. I didn't really know like that I had insomnia. I just knew that it wasn't really a word in my repertoire. But yeah, things like insomnia. Obviously, I was very malnourished. I had a lot of brain fog, fatigue, exhaustion. I had acne covering my face, down my arms, down my back, down my butt, down my thighs. I was covered, and there was so much embarrassment with that. My weight would fluctuate. I was obese. Like I remember the day the doctor told me, like, you're obese. I was like really like, obese, overweight, but my weight would fluctuate a ton. So again, like I said, there was over 50 symptoms, and I was always looking for answers, and I didn't, obviously I didn't find them at all. So I ended up being undiagnosed at the end, right? There was no diagnosis, as well as like no cure, right? There's like, I feel like I walked away undiagnosed and incurable. Like that's kind of how I felt. And I got sicker. I went for healing to find healing and answers, and I got sicker. And like I said, I knew my body, so I did say no to pharmaceutical drugs and all that. Um, and then I might share one or two more stories around that, and then I'll share my turning point. There was one point when I was in the hospital, and again, remember, like I'm like vomiting, stomach pain, can barely eat at some points, right? I mean, there were times where I was eating like I was very hormonal. So there were times where I was eating an entire bag of salt and vinegar chips, right? I had a very American diet. So there were times where I was like shoving down my emotions and binge eating. So there were times I was eating, but I was definitely malnourished, right? And there was other times where I was like vomiting up that stuff. But being that sick, so I went to the hospital, and they gave me a sandwich with radioactive green eggs. And I was like, I knew green eggs and ham from from childhood story, but they literally gave me radioactive green eggs, and I'm like, I have vomiting issues, stomach issues, and you want me to eat that? And my mom's sitting next to me, like, you can do it, like cheering me on to eat these eggs. And the purpose of it was so that they can put me in front of a camera. They had this big, like, massive camera that's like big as like wider than my body. And so they wanted me to stand in front of it, and to watch, right, to watch the food go down and watch to see again, and no results yet again, like zero results from that. Like again, it was like undiagnosable. So I had to go through, but that was an awful experience to go through. um yeah, and then I also they did like an endoscopy where they stuck the camera up into my body and stuff, and like again, that was just, it was. I woke up and I'm like, where am I? Like I was like, it was terrifying to wake up and know that you don't know anybody in this place. Like nobody, like again, like I had no connection to anyone. Like no one made me feel like comfortable or safe, or like I didn't wasn't really treated with like like it was very cold and isolating, right? And so, and again, this is my experience, right? I'm sharing my truth, and like I have nurse friends and things like that. So it's like, everyone has their experience. And I'm sharing my truth so that I'm here to speak from my voice, as well as to anyone who else who's gone through, something parallel that they can relate to this, right? And um, but I had woken up from surgery or whatever they call it, and I was like, I don't remember anything. I was like, "Are you starting?" And it was just, it was again. There's trauma. There was traumatic experiences, and there's even worse ones that I'm describing. I'm just giving you, just some of the microdose of my experience, and it was terrifying to wake up and have no idea what happened. And I'm like, "Oh, you guys getting started yet?" And they were like, "We're done." And I was like, "How did I miss?" Like it was just, I was so out of it, and it was just, yeah. So the end point was I had scheduled an appointment. This was again like 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, in and out. This was at the end of college. I was home for a break, and my mom and I had scheduled an appointment for someone to look at my acne. Right. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. Every time I went in, I'm like, this is it. I'm going to solve my problems. I'm going to heal. I'm going to do this. And every single time I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And I'm going to find my answers. I'm going to find out what's going on, what's wrong with me. Like some words, like one of the biggest words was broken. Like I felt broken and unfixable. Like that was like, if I were to sum it up, that's a huge word where I felt broken. That was one of the biggest words. And so I was like so gung ho. I was like, oh my God, this acne is covering my body. It's embarrassing. I hate the way it looks. Like I went through all of this hating my body as well for so many different reasons. But the acne, obviously being sick, it's like I hated my body. And so again, I went through over 50 symptoms, and I'm even more issues than that. So again, I'm just giving you a couple, but I went through a lot of body issues, a lot of things, again, women, teenager girls go through. I went through a ton of it. I'm just giving you the microdose version. And I am going to I've been writing out every single symptom, and I'm like literally writing out my entire story to like give every little detail eventually, there's going to be a time and place for that. But now just kind of, overall summary. So anyway, so I'm going in, my mom went with me, and I'm like, okay, this is it. Like, we're gonna find the answers. And I live in Cleveland, well, I don't know if I should be naming them. Anyways, there's a large hospital, and we got lost because the hospital system was so large. And so we were a couple minutes late, and they said, we're not taking you anymore. And so the door was kind of closed in my face. And that was my end point. I got into the car, so I didn't get to go to the appointment. I got into the car, and I just started bawling. And all of my emotions, the 8 years were just crying and pouring out of me. And it was never safe to be in my emotions in front of my mother. She says, control your emotions, always control your emotions, don't show your emotions, right? Like I was never allowed to. But at that point, I just like lost it. And I cried all these tears. And it was the last day I ever walked. Like I walked away from the hospital, and it was probably a saving grace, because maybe they would have given me shots or some kind of drugs that would have it would have been, so that yeah. And yeah, that and one other experience were like, yeah, again, now that I'm sharing, I'm like more and more the story's coming back. I was like, oh yeah, there was this other part. But anyways, I was just like, it was my breaking point of walking away, and I was like, you know, after 8 years, I walked away, and I just let all those tears, they were, I mean, ultimately, they were cleansing tears. Again, and the pain, releasing the pain, right? There was so much pent-up pain from the 8 years. So yeah, so that was the 8 years, and, um whew, yeah, there's a lot of energy moving as I'm sharing the story. It's fascinating. Yeah, and so my turning point, um, so I was off at college, and I knew I didn't like the food. Like, the food was disgusting to me, and I was just like, "That food is gross, like, I don't wanna eat it." I knew it was gonna make me sick. So I started to kind of like, the wheels started turning. The food is making me sick, and that was kind of the first sign, um, that that type of food was making me sick, and I just thought, "Ew, I'm not eating that." So I barely ate, but you know, I actually felt better not eating
Yeah.
because my body wasn't being, you know, this food that was toxic to my body was not going in my body. And so I had graduated from college and came home, and to this day, I have no idea where this magazine came from. But this magazine showed up in the house. I was home, I graduated from college. It was, you know, the end of, you know, the end of the school year, like summer break, out for summer break. Well, it wasn't, you know, it was summertime. So it wasn't a break, it was permanently out of school. um, and this magazine had showed up, and it was a magazine with recipes in it that were seasonal eating. And so it was peach season at that time in Ohio where I live, and so there was peach salsa, there was peach burgers, and there was like these recipes to eat seasonally, to eat homemade. And before, again, I was very much on an American diet, like, you know, processed food, fast food, canned food, spaghettios, like all the things, you know. So I started cooking, and it was the first sign of healing. And food, cooking homemade, teaching myself to cook, from this magazine, eating seasonal, and the acid reflux healed. So I no longer had acid reflux at all. My acne started to get better. And so I began my own healing journey, and I was like, oh my goodness, like food and homemade cooking and eating seasonal and leaving behind the American diet of, you know, the fast food, like now I know how many toxins are in, you know, all the preservatives and toxins and things were horrific for my body. So food became my medicine, and it was the first signs of my symptoms. I mean, completely, like my acid reflux is completely healed. Like it has not come back. My vomiting, I can't even remember the last time I vomited, completely healed. And so I became my own healer, right? Through my lifestyle, through the things I did. And then with that, it didn't heal everything. It just began my healing journey. And every time I healed a symptom, a new medicine came to me. So then meditation, sound healing, journaling, like all these different medicines, yoga, like all these things, it just kept coming and coming. Like new medicines came every time I had was here to heal a symptom. It was like a new medicine arrived. Oh, you have this symptom, here's a new medicine. You have this symptom, here's a new medicine. So that was kind of my life, but it led me on to becoming a healer, a medicine woman, self healing. It led me on my spiritual pathway deep into spirituality. It led me on my personal transformation journey. It led me into like just all these parts of myself, right? Like it just kept growing and growing. And now it's like, you know, every day I work with, I mean, I just brought my, you know, cacao medicine. So every day I work with medicines, and I healed myself 80% on my own. 80% of my symptoms are completely healed. And it's interesting, where I started is kind of where I'm ending up. So there's still some like like liver stuff going on and some teeth healing taking place. So I have that like last 20%, which is kind of what I'm learning. It wasn't actually gut stuff, it's more liver stuff for me. And my liver was overloaded with toxins because I discovered I'm allergic to like synthetic perfumes, just highly allergic to everything synthetic. So that was a part of, there are many reasons, right? Like there were many reasons for the ailments and the sicknesses, but I could was able to heal and transform and work with medicines, these ancient, beautiful practices, which is what brought me here today. Because I'm like, I'm here to share my story. I'm here to, um, share medicines and all of that. So yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. Okay, I have a bunch of questions. I had to write them down while it was happening. So the first one, because like no topic is off the chart, right? So I kind of just want to go there if I can, but if you don't
Yeah.
want to, okay. So I automatically thought, obviously, because of some of my story with my brother and being vaccine injured, and you said first day of high school, which is also around the age in the States that they give the Gardasil shot. There's three
Mm.
parts to it. Do you know if you got that at the end of junior high or high school?
I do remember going in with my brother. It was interesting. My brother and I went in together and we got some kind of shot, but I don't remember.
The timeline?
It could have been, I think it was around teenage years. Yeah. So I don't remember if it's exactly that. For me, yeah, I'm allergic to everything synthetic, like everything synthetic, from cleaning products to perfumes to shots to pharmaceutical drugs to food, anything that has anything that's not made from the earth of the purest quality, like my body has a negative reaction to.
Yeah.
So,
Which,
yeah,
which, being a nutritionist, I mean, I still always have more and more to learn and grow, but it's the toxic load, right? Like at some
yeah,
point when there's so many toxins put in, and like you said, you were brought up in that way, and obviously you were like normally vaccinated and just, all in the regular system in that way. So there's a toxic load. So it's like your system is like, no more. I can't do anything synthetic. And that's amazing that you were able with food. And I do love that because, Hippocrates, like, being Greek, his quote, right, is let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. And it's so interesting to me still. Yeah, just, I call it Rockefeller medicine because of the history, but it's like before, the regular hospitals and Rockefellers got in, it's like homeopathic hospitals were the way. And then all of a sudden, even though doctors take the MDs take the Hippocratic oath, and that's his main quote, there's like no connection, especially in North America, usually with the food thing. Anyways, that's a side note. But I was curious though, so like with all of your symptoms, how were you able to like find a center enough to get through high school and then to go on? Because I mean, that's a lot. Like,
yeah.
understatement a lot, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I had depression, anxiety. I mean, again, you name it, like I had I mean, man, somewhere between 50 and 100 symptoms. I mean, of things that I suffered from. And some of them were physical, emotional, mental, I mean, on all levels, right? Um, and I was in severe depression. Like I was in darkness, right? I was in severe dark, like there were points where I was like, I don't want to fucking be here, right? Like, I wasn't suicidal. Like knew I wouldn't like, do anything, but I was like, I fucking hate my life, right? Like there were moments of severe darkness and severe depression and like this fucking sucks. Like being alive, it's too painful. Like I've been on my deathbed multiple times. So it's gotten really bad. Um and I feel like and you've asked me this beautiful question before, and I think
yeah.
part of what it comes back to is like there's just something within me that is just like a seeker who again coming back to like knowledge, wisdom, like wanting to know more, wanting to find the answers. I feel like there's this innate part of me that is just always there of like I want to find the answers. Like again, I kept going back to the hospitals because I was like, okay, this is it, this is going to be the answers. And I feel like there's just been this like part of me that's like, I'm gonna find the answers. There's this, I'm here as a seeker. I think is a good word, is like I'm seeking, and there was just always this seeking for more. I know there's more. There was always just this knowing of there's got to be more to life. There's got to be more to life, and that kind of repetition of there's more to life, and this desire just for more, and just like craving for knowledge, wisdom, answers to my questions. And I think that is a big part of the driving force. And then also, like, looking back, it was like I realized, like, the opposite of that is like not having purpose, because that's how I felt. Like that was a big part of it, is not like a big part of the depression was not having purpose.
Totally.
And when I became a school teacher, like I have, my purpose was like, woo, here we go. Like I felt so much purpose when
Mm.
I like started school teaching, and purpose has continued to be like astronomical now. It's like my purpose is massive, because I'm a multi-passionate. So I have so many purposes and passions and things that like light me up. But yeah, I think that's what it was, is just this something innate inside of me is like, there is more. And just knowing there's more and seeking it, and yeah, knowing there's more to life. Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe that with Kali's story, like, is that a little bit maybe of the connection with your origin story with Kali, in the sense of like she wasn't a seeker, but she had that fire and kind of determination, it
Mm.
feels like. Um, and it sounds like, right, like a lot of what you experiences was external and internal experience of demons. Like these, if demons was an expression, like being sick to that level and going to these places, going to the hospitals, and the experience of how the loneliness and the depression, things like that's all demonic in a sense, I feel. And it's like somehow that fire within you, which it sounds like the seeker was how the fire burned to get to the place where you were gifted the magazine, and that was kind of a catalyst in a sense of beginning to connect with your body on a level that you could actually heal and come back to cycles and nature, and to your true kind of essence and self to be able to heal. But do you feel like that's maybe the connection, or is there a connection with Kali, or it was more that you wanted to share your origin because we shared Kali's origin?
Yeah, both. I would say it's because we shared her origin. It made sense. I loved sharing, here's my origin, right? Like, this is my main story of why
Yeah.
I'm here,
Yeah.
because without that experience, like, like it led to a lot of bravery and, so many things that got me here. And then I would definitely say, like, and people say this to me all the time. They're like, "You're the most motivated, dedicated person I know. You're the strongest person I know." Like, people say that to me all the time. And so, again, I think there is this determination and motivation and strength within me, which it could be, yeah, part of that fire, fire energy. That is, again, it just is, yeah, it's just, yeah, so I feel like that can definitely be relatable. Yeah, and I think the word demonic can mean, I mean, again, yeah, we face our own demons, right? It's just the, and we can call it what resonates with us. But, I'm all about the shadow work, and the shadow realm is a massive part of this.
Yeah.
And so this is the depth of the shadow realm, the shadow work. And in an essence, yeah, we all face our own, challenges, trials, tribulations, whatever, whatever words we want to use. But yeah, since it's Kali theme, like, definitely we can use that word. That, yeah, we're it's like facing your own inner demons, right? And so yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so grateful that somehow there was something that pulled you to connect to the determination and the seeker and the fire to be able to, get through to the light and continue on your journey to be able to share it today, because it is a very powerful journey. And I feel like it's so potent today, like seeing my stepdaughters, they eat so American, even being quote unquote vegetarian. I mean, not quote unquote, but they are vegetarian, but it's like, people think even certain, lifestyles can be healthy, but it's like they eat like hydrogenated oils and love going to these hydrogenated oil, and they seek it and love it, and even ketchup, like some simple thing, but it's like, they don't want the organic ketchup. They want the toxic ketchup. And I'm just like, okay, I've just kind of opted out. Like I try to influence where I can, but it's crazy to me. Even growing up in Canada, I don't know. I feel like there is a definitely like 10 times, I would say, the level of toxic, quote unquote food. So it's still such a relevant story to be shared, and especially for women, with our relationship with our bodies and, the digestive system, the liver being part of that. And liver is what, metabolize our hormones. So it's very, very, important for women to be aware of the liver and the digestive system and how that affects the endocrine system. And you were saying with the acne, right? Which skin is also very connected to the liver and again, the endocrine
Mhm.
system and all of that. So it's a very potent story that, healing is possible, and, really deeply listening to the body. Like that's such a powerful message and awareness that it's possible, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely listening to the body, and then, I mean, yeah, intuition
Yes.
and yeah, all of that. So, yeah, so thank you. Thank you for listening. And it was so interesting sharing that because I was like, whoa, there like so many other parts of the story. Like I was like, man, there's so many other directions I could go. And again, it's like we're gonna be on this podcast for a while. So all these other parts of the stories, as well as our Patreon, all these other stories can come out in different ways to go. Because again, it's body image, things like that, emotional suppression, all of that was a part of it. And these are all themes that are gonna, that we're gonna address for all of our sacred sisterhood here. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if I was going to share my origin story originally. We talked about that yesterday, but I felt that the story of leaving North America felt the most connected to Kali. And like right after the story happened, I kept talking about that was Kali, that was Kali, even though I didn't know a lot about Kali in kind of a conscious level. Although I do feel like, I'm very into quote unquote reincarnation and just the concept that time's not linear. And I definitely remember aspects of lives being an Indian girl and someone that's close to me now. I call her my Indian sister, and she's Indian and grew up in Hong Kong. Anyways, so, I don't know if it was like through that or through yoga that I knew about Kali, but my story, yeah, I felt like I really wanted to share because of, I felt like it was just an obvious connection. And at some point, I'll share more of my origin story or quote unquote awakening story. I don't know why I keep doing the quote unquote. So yeah, so what happened for me? So I was married at that point, a couple of years, I guess. And I was living in British Columbia, Canada, and we had just moved back from Ontario. We were living in Ontario for just under a year. And we'd moved out there because my husband at the time owned a house in Vancouver, and the cost of living in Vancouver is like nothing else anywhere else in Canada. It's just crazy. It's a beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, stunning city. You have rainforests, which I think it's like the second level rainforest. It's not like the way Brazil is, but it is a level of the rainforest. And you have ocean all around. There's mountains, like it's just stunning. And also climate wise, it's the best, one of the best in the country as well. It doesn't get, under zero a lot of times. And so we moved to, sold his house because of the cost and everything, and moved to Ontario. And we knew we were gonna, make some money from that, and we did, and moved back to British Columbia because he got a job with someone who's kind of famous, and so he was building his dream home, this like A-frame home, and so we decided to move, and we actually found our house because it was during COVID online, and it just looked beautiful. There was an acreage, and you could actually see the lake, and we thought, okay, we can kind of homestead here. There's enough acreage to like get some goats or chickens or whatever. And so, we packed all of our stuff from Ontario, and it was like a bit of a process. And, in February of that year, so that was February 2021, before all of that was decided, I said to my ex-husband, I was like I'm done with Canada because in Ontario at the time, you couldn't buy pens and paper, you couldn't buy clothes. Like there was just a lot that was shut down, and it felt like what I had seen on TV of China, and I felt like the opposite of freedom. You weren't even supposed to have friends or family over at your house. You could actually get a fine for that, and it was just weird. Like none of it made sense. And I felt like the whole thing was a sham. And so he was like, let's just calm down. In British Columbia, things were more open. You could buy papers and pen. And it was just, people had to wear masks, but it wasn't as kind of panic driven the way the quote unquote East Coast Ontario was. So I kind of calmed down and decided, okay, I'm going to go with you. And so that's what we did. And so we drove across, took a week, and landed in our beautiful home. And randomly, we had like so many people want to come visit us. It was so weird. Like we'd just gotten there, but also we'd been away from BC for a year. So I was like, okay. So everyone was like, let's come visit this weekend and that weekend. And then my birthday weekend, July. And so we ended up being there for 12 weeks. And around the ninth or 10th week, my sister, the same girl who I just mentioned, came to visit. And while she was about to come, her mother-in-law was like, there's a lot of fires in that part. And even my dad, before we left to go to that part, it was around Kelowna, Vernon area, the Okanagan. My dad was like, there's a lot of fires there. People's houses burned down. And me and my ex-husband were like, well, it's not going to happen to us, And my sister, her mother-in-law was like, those fires look crazy. And, it was kind of smoky a little bit, but then it would pass for a day and it was fine. And the day that she was coming to fly from Toronto, Canada to, to Kelowna, it was like all of a sudden when she was on the plane, because it's 3 hours ahead there. So she left at like 6 in the morning EST and arrived, I don't even know, like maybe 10 o'clock, I guess, because it's like a 4 or 5 hour flight. PST, it's like the fires and the smoke had just gotten crazy so fast in hours. And I was like, oh my gosh, like she's on the plane, she's coming. And like, I told her the news is propaganda and they're amplifying everything. But all of a sudden it did get pretty bad. So she stayed with us anyways with her husband, and yeah, I call him my godson, her son, her first son. And it was a beautiful experience, and they got to see the house and the acreage and just doing hikes and stuff around there. But the whole time it was super, super smoky. And it wasn't until like 5 days beforehand, my godson, my, sister's son, the first one, because now she has a second one, he was panicked. And so his dad was like, saying to my sister, like, okay, we have to go. Like, even though, it looks like everything's okay, it's been smoky, he's panicked, like, we gotta go. So they went to another part of British Columbia. And I was debating if I was going to leave with them that morning. And then it rained that morning. So I decided not to go. And that night, let's say it was like a Thursday night or something, a girl that I'd become friends with kind of because of the water and a few other things. We had similar views about vaccines and, anyways, she messaged me. She was like in this area because we were like in the mountains. And so her neighborhood was like kind of 5 minutes down the mountain in another part of the mountain. And so she messaged me and she was like, we're getting evacuated, and you should leave too, because ours was like a little bit, I don't know if it was west, but anyways, we were a little bit closer to Kelowna, where she was a little bit closer to Vernon, because we're like literally in the mountains, so we're literally between Kelowna and Vernon. And so I panicked as well and took the dogs, and got the car ready and stuff like that. And I was like to my ex-husband, like, I'm gonna go, are you gonna stay or are you gonna go? He's like, well, I have to work tomorrow, so I'm gonna stay. And I was like, okay. And I remember driving away from the house, like crying, being like, am I gonna see him again? I called his dad, my stepfather, or my father-in-law at the time, like telling him the situation. I was feeling like maybe I'm gonna drive to see him in another part of British Columbia, which is about 4 hours from where he was. And I called my mother-in-law and I'm like, he's staying. Like I was like panicked. She was like a lot calmer, which was nice to kind of, have that calmer voice. And it was just like, yeah, like literally driving through the mountains of smoke. And it was crazy. And part of it was also beautiful though. Like I remember looking back once I got, through the mountains to Kelowna and looking back, it's like it was really smoky and there was a lot of red, but something about it, even though it was spooky too, something about it was really beautiful and almost cleansing. Although I for sure feel like, it wasn't natural, right? Like there's natural, and that was definitely for sure, in my personal opinion, 1,000% like planted there. And the girl who had called me, I don't know, I think it's her brother was one of the head fire chiefs, and she was saying there was a lot of weird things that were going on where it's like they were extinguishing the fires, and then all of a sudden like another chief from another area was like, oh, you can just like get out of there now, but the fires were starting to go down, but then them getting out like made the fires worse. So just like a lot of weird, quote unquote conspiracy or just weird stuff that was going on. But anyways, I left, and then 5 days later, our area, that neighborhood, 5 minutes west, got the evacuation notice. And so when you get evacuation notice, you have to leave. If you do not, then, there's no opportunity for anyone to be able to come and get you. So that's like your own kind of disclose, like your own risk. But yeah, they won't come and try to help you. Whereas, and technically, legally, you're supposed to leave. So 5 days later, my ex-husband left. And so he met us at a hotel. And during that time, there was a week where we didn't know, like, is the house gone? Is that area gone? Like, we didn't know, like, that whole area in the mountains. So we were kind of, he was still working because the area that he was working was also in the mountains, but it was like closer to the Kelowna. So it was smoky, but it was still like he could go into work from where we were staying. And so we were kind of deciding, okay, like if the house is gone, like what are we going to do? And if the house is still there, what are we going to do? And because in February of that year, now it's August 2021, I had already wanted to leave. I was like, okay, well, if our stuff is gone, because he was a carpenter, so he had like a whole garage full of, tools and things like that for his work. I was like, well, a lot of it'll be gone. Can we go? Like, can we leave Canada? And we had also just gotten the notice. British Columbia was going to be the first or second province. I don't know if Quebec was first and then BC, or if it was BC and Quebec, but those two provinces were among the first to get the vaccine passport. So technically, you could not leave Canada unless you were vaccinated. And both of us were on the same page that way. We did not want the COVID vaccine. So that happened around that same week before we knew if our house was gone. So we were kind of, thinking about it and looking at it. And a friend of mine who I went to nutrition school had actually met online. While we were leaving Ontario, she was going to Dominican Republic. And so I was talking to her about this whole experience. And she's like, it's amazing here. There's so many expats, and there's a lot of community, and it's easy to come here. You don't need a visa. And, it was just like kind of checking off all the boxes. And from Ontario, it's like a direct flight, 4 hours, where we were looking at Costa Rica a little bit, but it was like two flights there. There was again for the dogs, like just a whole list of what they would have to get vaccinated, which again, I'm, even with the animals, mostly like anti in that department, but I have done in some ways what I've had to do to get them where they have to be. But if I had a choice, I would just do homeopathic and not any of that. But anyways, so and with DR, it was just like they just needed the main, one's puppy and the rabies, and that's it. It wasn't like this whole long list like Costa Rica. And Costa Rica also, you have to do um, a run where it's like you leave the country, so you do a border run where DR didn't have any of that. And we also looked at Nicaragua, but I only knew one girl, an American from Texas, who was there and enjoying it. And the cost of living was low, but again, it was like how you got there ends up being like way further to fly. And I didn't know the community as well, so we ended up deciding on Dominican Republic. And my ex-mother-in-law, I told her like, so if the house is gone, like we're kind of thinking to move to Dominican Republic. She's like, yeah, like do it. So that gave me enough of the fuel. And then we found out, I don't even know if it like what day it was of the week or anything, but we found out like almost a week to the day of being evacuated, once he was evacuated and staying at this hotel and dealing with insurance and dealing with also these like kind of sort of like food stamps that the province were giving us. And we had to like wait in this long lineup, and it was a whole thing. It was like a little bit weird, but I mean, I'm grateful that there was some support. And so, yeah, we found out for sure that our house was gone. And that week it was very, very heavy of like uncertainty and what are we going to do? And we had just gotten there, 12 weeks before, like the day that we found out our house was gone, it had been 12 weeks that we were at that house. And and then when I found out the house was gone, it was almost like relief. And so to me, that's where Kali, it's like she kind of just came in, the fire. And, like there was still moments that lingered for a while after of like, oh, like the bookshelf that my grandfather who passed, who I was super close with, he had bought me as a, 5-year-old girl, or like that one book, because I grabbed like 5 books, like how much can you grab, for a carload with 2 dogs? And, I got my guitar and he got the Kangen stuff, whatever. But so it was like little smidgets, but it was so interesting to just have the whole house gone and like all of our stuff that we just brought across the country for the second time, in a year, yeah, was gone. And something about it actually felt like just light. It felt like, okay, I don't have any of this baggage. And we ended up having to drive back across the country again after 12 weeks from west to east this time. And our plates were still Ontario plates. So that was awesome. And yes, we had already decided on Dominican Republic. And then there was a couple of things that just fell right into place. We ended up through this friend who, told us about all this, who I'm still close with. She was like, oh, there's this lady who she's already booked a charter flight to come, which was like a few days after when Ontario was going to have the vaccine passport kick in. So technically, if we left early, we'd have to leave kind of earlier without like a vaccine passport to prove that we're vaccinated, or we leave after, but on a charter. That's how you can like kind of bypass that. And also, we would have to have flown if we flew commercial to another part of the country. So to Punta Cana, which is like 7 hours from where we ended up being. So we ended up being around Cabarete, Sosua area, which is really close to the airport, Puerto Plata. But Puerto Plata was closed for commercial. It was only open for private, for charter flights. So yeah, we would have ended up like having to fly with the dogs, you know, and take like a taxi for 7 hours, and it was just so complicated. And so it ended up being 5K for us with the dogs to go on this charter with this lady who she had other people that were supposed to go on the charter with her who couldn't end up making it last minute, whatever. And so she paid like the majority of it. And also last minute, the charter, which was supposed to be a 6-seater, ended up being a 12-seater. So it like, and in those 2 weeks when we had gotten back to Ontario, my dad's friend's brother or something had this house that we rented so we could stay there and like organize our stuff, because a lot of people when they left, they would send themselves barrels because there's like very expensive like electronic stuff. So we, used the insurance money and bought like toaster and like a vacuum cleaner and just like, main stuff that you would need to just kind of, run a house. Which we rented for a while, but it was still good to have those things. And we actually put those in storage until we bought our house in Dominican Republic. But yeah, so that's what we did. We send ourselves stuff and like, cleaning products that are all natural and just certain things like that that you just don't have in DR. And it was like $200 to send yourself like these barrels of stuff that you have, because we didn't know like, if we're ever coming back or if we're going to come back in a year. And so in 2 weeks, that's when we got to Ontario. We got everything organized with the barrels. We had to get all the paperwork for the dogs. They had like more paperwork than me and him. It's like literally like all this stuff from the Canadian government, blah, blah, blah. As soon as we got to DR, they didn't even care. Like, esto es tu perro? Sí? Okay, bueno. Like, that's like, they didn't give a F, right? Where Canada was like, do you have this paper and that? Like, they're so bureaucratic, which is part of why, I mean, Canada's so naturally beautiful, but the bureaucracy is just fucking nuts to me. Excuse my language, but we're raw. And so yeah, we ended up on the charter and opened the bottle of champagne. Neither one of us had ever been to Dominican Republic before, and we're just like, fuck yeah, let's fucking do it. And it was amazing. It was an amazing, amazing flight. Like I definitely can see why people love charters, because it's just, yeah, it's phenomenal with the champagne, the dog sitting beside us. And yeah, it was literally like going to paradise. And there was a few things that were closed there, but it was a lot easier to be able to move around because their system is not as locked as the Canadian system. And just having, the ocean and not having to be on a schedule. Yeah, it just felt like Kali came in and she just like took all the demons. And here we were all of a sudden, in 3 weeks after our house was gone in paradise and just getting to be on our own schedule. And having beautiful coffee that's like, naturally grown up in the mountain right there. And like, most of their food is quite natural and quite good. Not all of it, but a lot better for sure. And like, coconut water and yeah, so it was pretty amazing. And that for me was Kali in my life. Like I kept saying that, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, your house burned down. But it was like beautiful actually how everything happened. Like I said, there was little snippets of like certain things that were, important that you're like, okay, that's gone. But for the most part, it was like just this weight off of our shoulders and leaving Canada was really beautiful. And so yeah, I'm grateful for that energy and that cleansing and for that experience because it was an incredible experience, honestly. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's my life, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that. And yeah, totally real and raw. That's what we're doing here. So I love that. Thank you for sharing from that real and raw space and speaking your truth, right? Like that's where here is just yeah, speaking your truth. And it's interesting, the word paradise. When you said that, I was like, man, that really is the other side. Like when we get through the destruction, right? Through the whatever that looks like, right? It's going to be our own story of that destruction. But the theme of massive fire, Kali destruction,
Yep.
the other side is paradise. And it also, like, you're like, just your, the attitude of like, this was beautiful, is so wonderful to see. And it made me think about like, my story of like, whoa, like what was the paradise? And I was like, well, homemade food is a freaking paradise for me. Like, the meditation, all the medicines feel like they're like, and I still utilize all those medicines every day, like I said. And like that is for me to have the highest quality food and like the taste buds. I was like, I love eating and I love food. And like for me, I was like, that's you helped me have a perspective shift on how
Mm,
paradise really is the other side. And then when I thought that, I actually had a one of the way my body speaks to me is through shivers. And I had from my belly button, so sacral chakra, a shiver all the way up. And then I felt it like connect with my throat. And it was like, whoa, like it was just that my body confirms through like shivers is one of my signs. But yeah, that
that's it.
paradise part was so beautiful to share.
Thank you.
Um,
And I also wanted to add, if I may, that I also feel like the paradise for you, from how I heard your story, was also just coming home to yourself, to your body, because, having those extremes of your body and hating your body and almost being at war with yourself, with your body, and wanting an external something to come and like help you or save you. And in the end, it was you
mhm,
with your body, you with your embodiment, you with your intuition, you with, you know, allowing yourself to be led and allowing yourself with the signs and the intuition and and I feel like that's a big part of the goddess and being a woman in our power is that embodiment, like not being afraid of like we are having this experience, sure, maybe in a way we're borrowing this body while we're here, but while we're here, like this is the whole fucking point of
mhm,
empowerment and being in our power is like to embody this, like, and it's fucking beautiful when we get to have the paradise of that connection and that relationship with ourself in our sovereignty. And yeah, and I feel like for me, the sovereignty was choosing this and we actually fucking did it.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, super cool. Yeah, and I think, I'd love to go a little more. I mean, Kali is the fire, and you had not only symbolic but physical, right? Like yeah. So, um, yeah, go and I know we've talked about this personally, but bringing that here, talk a little bit more about how Kali, is in your story.
Yeah, yeah, definitely the actual literal fire of the house for sure. And maybe also, I know we've talked about it and you've reminded me of a couple times with my moon and Sag, like that fire too. It was like I feel like she was within me in a sense, or a part of her essence or archetype lives within me to be like, not bulldozed over by the experience. And that fire within me was like, okay, I'm getting through these fucking demons. And not only did we get through it, we ended up like leaving on a fucking charter.
Right.
Like that's there's no other like amazing way to leave. And it literally just like fell into our laps. And that part of, my ex-husband, I'll always, always be grateful for, because not everybody would have been like, okay, with that part. And neither one of us had ever been there. And we're both just like, okay. And he was really good about, figuring out some of the paperwork with the dogs, because I was like anxious about some of those things and, all the things. But I had enough of the part where the fire was like, how about Dominican Republic? Like, let's go. You said we could go if the house was gone because we had that week. And he's like, yeah, I did. And so we did. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I feel like Kali is just that fire of like determination. But, I've had determination like with my business and with certain other things, but it's a different kind of determination. Like the fire is just fucking fast. It's like it almost doesn't have to see what's around it. In my business, we've talked about like how people learn in different ways and different colors. I don't know exactly whose kind of archetypal psychology this is, but the red is the person that just like starts running and don't know where they're going. And then the green person wants all the details and all of like, the kind of cerebral thing. And the yellow person is like the heart person. The blue person's like wants to be in community. And I feel like for sure that's the top thing in my way of learning and experiencing is the red. It's like I start running and I don't know where I'm going, but something in me, similar to how you had that something in you, which was more of an inquiry. For me, it's more of like, gotta go. Like, it's just like, I don't know. And it's happened so many times throughout my life, where I just know, like, I just know that this part of the story is done and it's time to go. And that was it. And, I was grateful we had that week to kind of like sit in the shadows with all of the stuff. And, it was kind of a gift, even with like the vaccine passport, because it was like all the things were lining up that were against us, which made us be like, okay, yeah, let's go. Like, what do we have to lose? We can't stay. Like he knew too. We couldn't stay. It wasn't safe. It wasn't what we felt free or safe or any of the things. He didn't really have the same work. So yeah, I feel like the Kali was really just the speed and the kind of like zest or like energy of the determination. Like it's a fast determination that is not really necessarily like super calculated.
Yeah, and when you were speaking, it really had me thinking about the two sides. Again, coming back, duality is coming up strong for me,
Yeah.
but the destruction of fire and the creation of fire, and you
Mhm.
really had the duality of the destruction of fire, literally, figuratively, metaphorically, um, and then the creation of it with, yeah, and moving all the pieces as well as moving to paradise. Yeah, and then the other question, last question, and then we can go into this little more discussion about Kali. But yeah, I want like let's go to the charter. Like just like let's
Yeah.
immerse ourselves in this. Again, this is a part of the goddess, and the themes we're gonna be is luxury, right? Like
Yes.
luxury. So like give me like a like call me in, like describe the luxury, like give
Yeah.
me the details of that, like
Yeah.
like
I think
paint a
I only have one
picture.
picture. I should try to find the picture in front of the charter. It's with my friend Sherry. She dropped us off. She's my oldest friend since I was a kid. And so, okay, so she dropped us off at the airport. So it's actually a different area of Pearson Airport. So Pearson Airport is the main airport in Toronto. And so you have to actually kind of go like behind the airport into like the private charter area, which was really cool because at the time you're supposed to wear masks and again show your vaccine passport and all the like logistic bureaucratic stuff that I have like no like just it's just like no. Like I don't know. I just even though, I haven't lived like a celebrity, a part of me feels almost already like a celebrity in a way. Like I don't do that. Like sorry, don't do that. I don't live in that world. And so I actually got to really like embody that. So she dropped us off. We didn't have to wear masks. They had already told us we don't have to wear masks there, which was so nice. So I of course like took advantage of that. I'm like, I'm in a charter. Excuse me. No, I don't do that. You know. And Cora, my beautiful girl, at the time she was 10, I guess, my dog. And so she had flown with me many, many times. Like we had lived in many places together. And so she had never, like, I would just, normally put her in the cage and go under the plane. And so we got to just walk around this little charter airport thing. And George, he was 6 months at the time, and so he had never experienced this, so he didn't know where he was, so he was a bit more anxious. And we just got to walk around, and then a guy came and was like, "Okay, do you have the dog paperwork?" So we gave him, the thick dog paperwork stuff. And so they're like, "Okay," and we met the pilot. We're like, "Oh, hello, it's nice to meet you." I can't remember if he was wearing a mask or not. I don't think so, but anyways. And we met, there was like two crew members. They're both Dominican, but spoke English. And met them. And then we, with my friend Sherry, went onto the platform of this charter airport section and took a few pictures, gave her a big hug, and, she drove home. And we literally like walked onto the charter, and my dog Cora, who, like I said, had experienced going under the plane so many times because of her size and stuff, was like looking at me like, for real, we got to just walk on this. And also with the charter, which was another benefit to it, which is part of why we're like 5K, like, because normally it would have been probably about 2 or 3K for us with the dogs to fly, but to the other part of Dominican Republic, Punta Cana, we got to bring, so he was into mountain biking. He had managed to get his mountain bike before the house burnt down. He did have a little bit of tools, not a lot, but like a kind of a backpack full. And so he brought those things. We brought the Kangen water machines on board, which is also so nice because they can be a little bit like bulky if, with us, with the dogs, plus some suitcases, plus his bike. So we got to bring it all on board. And so there was just like this whole section we could put all of our crap. And yeah, the seats were leather. And like I said, it ended up last minute for some reason, the six-seater charter wasn't available. So they gave us a 12. They actually like messaged us in an email. We had an email going with the pilot, like, "Oh, sorry, like we have to change it, but don't worry, you're gonna get this 12-seater." We're like, okay, which apparently some celebrities had actually been on it. Certain like rock stars and stuff were like, cool, whatever. And yeah, so Cora sat beside me on the plane. I got to pet her the whole time. George was sitting with my ex-husband kind of on his lap, and he was more anxious because again, he had never flown before. And once the plane took off and they put music, "Do you want tunes?" Yeah, we got to have my phone or iPad or something was connected to the music the whole time. And the lady who had invited us, I forget her name right now, which doesn't matter because I don't necessarily want to say names, but she was going like kind of to her retirement. So she was sitting in the one section and she brought her cats with her. So they were like, I thought the dogs were going to freak out about the cats, but they actually didn't. But they were in cages, like in another section of the plane. And so she was all excited and she had a lot of like symbolism to leave that day because of her brother who had passed and certain things and her retirement and whatever. And yeah, the plane took off. And once we were up in the air, then the two flight attendants, the one lady, she was like, "Do you want to open the champagne?" I'm like, "See," like I was ready.
Yeah.
Which I don't always drink a lot, but yeah, champagne. So the whole time we're drinking champagne and just so excited. And yeah, it was amazing. Like it's 4 hours, 3.5 or 4 hours to get there. So it was super amazing. And then we ended up basically as the plane was about to land, we were listening to Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zero. It's called Home. And so it was cool. So I felt like I was coming home to DR and I didn't know like how long am I going to be there? Am I going to get pregnant while I'm there? Like I didn't know any of those things. And yeah, and in a lot of ways, like I said, it was going to paradise. I mean, there are little things, and it is technically like third world country. So, there's not all perfect, all, like living at a resort, but yeah, it was overall. So yeah, overall it was super amazing, and I'm very, very grateful that experience. And it's beautiful to share because, there's been a lot of different things that have gone on in my life, but to be able to come back to those experiences and just things that light me up, a reminder of, yeah, just what I've been through and who I am, and just that those stories still live within us, you know?
Definitely. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, that's like a good final line for
Yeah.
that. The stories that still live within us, which again is a theme, right? Her
Yes.
story, our story, every story, like her story, the goddess story, but her story, our stories, and her
And I
story.
just looked up and it's 333, which is also like the goddess number.
Perfect. Yeah. And so, yeah, that segues into, yeah, just a little bit more discussion about Kali, and then, leaving everyone with inquiry. And yeah, so what do we want to say? um,
I don't know if there's much more else to say about Kali, but I definitely feel like the experience of her as can be present for everyone. Um, in if you allow that fire and that determination and listen, I feel to the intuition of, it's like it's kind of like I feel it reminds me a little bit of almost like a horse with the blinders on, you know? It's like you kind of have to just like let the fire guide you. I feel like that's what she is like this fire where it can be so easy. Again, feel like especially in North America, that can be so, analytical and heady, and nothing wrong with that. And there's a time and place absolutely for some of that. But she's, I feel like, way more cerebral. I feel like that, embodied, where it's like you have to just, yeah, like the blinders are on, you're not listening to anything or anyone, and just let that fire take you because it's calling. And I feel like that is where she can kind of be with you and guide you and support you in making real things happen. But you have to trust, on a very deep uh guttural level, in a way. Like you can't, and then I feel like, from your story too, like even though it was a bit longer of a process comparing to, like, my 3 week thing, it very much was, you got through the fire of your own demons, I feel like, and again listen to something, and then you were guided, and you allowed that to guide you to be able to do the healing. And for me too, with my ex-husband, just like listening to that fire, and you know just going, and not listening to what you should do by society or anybody else's standards. It's like the intuition and the fire, just like, and I feel like anyone has that opportunity, but it's like deep, deep, deep trust.
yeah. And again, for me, it's coming back to, again, the duality of co-creation.
Yes.
So allowing it to be a
Yeah.
co-creative experience, because
Yes.
again, going back to like a lot of what I've seen in the world is there could be like idolizing, right? Like
Right.
back to like there's a lot of idolizing that happens both in human and non-human form, right?
Yeah.
In the spiritual human form, like there's a lot of idolizing, and it's like, no, we get to bring this into a way that is very down to earth. It's very
Yes.
co-creative, as
Yes.
well as looking within ourselves to find our own Kalima, right? Or our own
Yes.
destruction origin story, fire that, allowed us to stand on the battlefield like she did and be like,
Yes.
I conquered what I needed to conquer, right? And so it's about looking into our own being and
Yes.
finding our own embodiment of that, of those
Absolutely.
qualities, of those attributes. And so this is the embodiment of the goddess, as well as allowing it to be co-creative and supportive, because sometimes we can allow ourselves to lean in to that greater, higher spiritual, higher self, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, to
Yes.
lean into that. And also, like, again, like you said, the trust, the faith, right?
Yes.
Leaning into something that is of has a more of a bird's eye view, right? That has that can co-create with us and support us, but also, again, like I said, it always comes back to again, I can't tell you how many times I see it where we give our power away. I
Yes.
see it over and over and over
Yeah.
again. It's like, no, find this story in yourself, um and then we're going to also have spaces where we'd love to hear your stories, like
Yeah.
definitely share your stories. We'll let you know we're going to have a Patreon. We're going to be doing all these beautiful things where we're going to meet some of you live and in things like that, and so there's going to be opportunities. We want to hear your story. So let's leave you with a couple inquiry questions. This is how we're going to end our beautiful podcast. Is now it's in your hands, right? We got to hear the goddess story. We got to hear, Evie and I each got to share our personal story, and we want to leave you full circle with an inquiry for yourself, a couple inquiry questions that leave you again. Um, where is where's the fire? Where has the fire, both the destruction and the conquering, that Kali has, the destruction, the creation, the conquering. These are some core words. What is your story, and where has this happened in your life? So that's one of the inquiries that I'm going to leave you with. And we're going to do like two or three. So if you got one, Evie, if there's anything.
Yeah, I feel like I want to ask more like where have you maybe been experiencing the fire and are not listening to it, you know?
Mhm.
Because I feel like it's also really easy where we get these nudges, and if we allow ourselves to trust that fire, then we can just the fire takes over and we get to have the destruction to be able to have the creation. But I feel it can be so easy to not trust and not have faith. And then we're just like stuck in our head and in a cycle. So, where can you maybe lean into that fire and allow it to guide? And I feel like that's where checking with yourself, only you can know with that co-creation with, Kali in this way to be able to be guided to your next kind of level or your highest self or whatever you want to call it. But it's a gift, but it takes a lot of fucking courage and trust. And where can you let go to be able to let the fire guide?
Yeah, and I feel like that's a very like my inquiry is very past and yours was very present. And so, yeah, bringing in very much, that's a beautiful question. Like, ooh, I'm like, ooh, like I even, felt very inspired by that question. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yours
the
too.
past, present, and then let me see if there's any other inquiry. Um, I feel like something around sovereign embodiment, sovereignty, empower the word empowerment is coming through again. This where can you call back your power, right? Which is again just bringing in the fire in its own way and its own like conquering. Where can you call back your power? And that could be calling back your power and like where and stepping greater into empowerment and embodiment. Yeah, I want to leave you with that as well. Those are some of our beautiful themes that we're going to have throughout our entire podcast. And then we'll be sharing more about, the program that we're going to have and the Patreon. So all of that will be coming. So yeah, and thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much. We are calling in all our soul sisters that resonate with this because we want you to have your voice and we want to connect in all of our sovereignty. And we have the beautiful goddess in the background who is a part of what we're all feeling called to. And so, yeah, we just appreciate that you have taken the time and space to listen to this. And we love hearing from you and want to hear your stories as well. So, yeah.
That was really well said. Thank you so much. And yeah, so appreciate you. Thank you for being open to hearing our stories. And I cannot wait to also hear more of your stories and the experiences and how we are bringing the goddess back and she's never been gone, but reviving her within ourselves and externally. And we both feel like this is part of our purpose. And so I'm grateful to, yeah, those that are connecting in this way to bring that back and to have our voices be shared with that openness.
Okay. Do you want to